The next one I shall read for you is called The Man Without a Country. Philip Nolan was a fine young Army lieutenant. In 1805, when Aaron Burr made his first trip to New Orleans, he walked with Nolan, he talked with him. He took him on a 2-day trip on his skiff, and when he returned, Nolan was bound body and soul to the views of Aaron Burr, who was a gay deceiver. A while later there was a court held, and many upper men in the army and service were questioned and went through a trial. Some were found guilty, some were not. The list was finished off with little Philip Nolan. It was easy to see he was tired of the service and had been willing to be false to it. He was guilty enough, and when the president in charge asked him if he had anything to say in his defense, he said in a fit of frenzy, "Damn the United States! I wish I had never to hear of the United States again." The president turned pale. He went into his quarters, and when he came out 15 minutes later, he said to the prisoner, "Prisoner, hear the sentence of this court. The court decides that you shall never again hear the name of United States." Nolan laughed, but no one else laughed. The judge was too solemn, and the court was hushed dead as night. He said, "Take the prisoner to New Orleans, deliver him to the commanding officer there. He is to be given quarters and rations and clothes fit for an army lieutenant. He is never to be reminded unnecessarily that he is a prisoner, but he is never to go on shore. He is never to hear the name of the United States again. And he is to stay on board the ship." Nolan was on many ships, and he was given proper attention. He generally ate his meals with the captain, and the other meals were, other than dinner, were furnished to him in his quarters. One time he and some fellow officers were reading out on the deck. They were reading the Lay of the Last Minstrel, and none of them knew just what it contained. When it came Philip Nolan's turn to read, he read, "Breathes there a man with soul so dead, who never to himself hath said, This is my own, my native land, whose heart hath ne'er within him burned as home his footsteps he hath tread. If such there be, go mark him well, for him no minstrel raptures thrill." Nolan turned pale, and he read, "If such there be, go mark him well." Proud though his title, high his name, the wretch concentred all in self. Nolan closed the book and threw it into the ocean and vanished into his room. No one saw him for 2 months, and after that he was changed. He was more quiet. He did not talk much to people, and he never read again except from the Bible or Shakespeare. The men were all able to loan him books as long as they were not printed in the United States or made no allusion to it. Newspapers must be gone over, and anything that pertained to the United States must be cut out. When he lived thus for 50 years, from one ship to another. And finally one day he was interpreting some orders for some Portuguese sailors who were going home. They were so excited to be going home. Nolan spoke to a man that was near him. "Let that be a lesson to you. Let that show you what it is to be without a family, without a home, and without a country. Never let a night pass that you don't pray to God to bless that flag and be true to it." Later, when he was talking to a friend of his, named Danforth. He invited him into his quarters. Danforth was surprised to see his room. He had a picture of George Washington over his bed with the stars and stripes draped over it. He also had a large map which he had made and drawn from memory with the 13 colonies on. And then he said, "Danforth, I am dying. I cannot get home. Will you not tell me something about my country? But first let me say that there is not in all America a man who loves America as I do, and who prays for her and hopes for her as I do." Danforth was sorry that he had never told him anything before, and he said, "I'll tell you anything you want to know." He told him about the states that had been added and tried to draw them in as best he could on the map. He told him about the great westward movement, and he told him about the North and the South and the problems they were having, and how Abraham Lincoln was President of the United States. After he had finished talking and answered all Nolan's questions, Danforth left and told him he would be back to look in on him later. When he came back, Nolan was gone, but he found a piece of paper that read, "Bury me at sea. It has been my home and I love it. But will not someone put up a stone in my memory that my disgrace may not be more than I can bear? Say on it, in memory of Philip Nolan, who loved his country as no other man has loved her, and yet no man deserved less at her hands."